few days, but I thought it was definitely time for myself to do one. So this is just sort of a 5 to 10 minute Q&A session where we answer questions that have been sent in previously from prior Q&A sessions. So let's get into it. So the first question is, are you worried about the outlook of the residential market for 2023? Now, this is actually a really interesting question, and it's a complex question with a lot of potential answers. And I suppose it's not just the residential market I'm going to talk about, it's sort of markets in general, but also the residential space. What we've seen over the last sort of 2 years is very, very aggressive growth, and not just construction, but obviously tech companies, et cetera, due to sort of the post-pandemic inflation. And I think what 2023 is going to represent is sort of more of a back to normal marketplace. So I think COVID was obviously very interesting times. The market got very, very busy, especially in construction. We sort of saw our sales grow from about 500 homes per annum right up to about 800 homes per annum at the peak. And 2023 is an interesting one because we're actually still delivering a lot of those pre-sold homes now and into the first sort of 2-3 quarters of next year. So I think as far as the construction sector, they're going to be reasonably busy for next year. And then it's all about forecasting sort of what's going to happen after that. I think the residential marketplace is just going to stabilize, go back to what I sort of was talking about before of more business as usual. Having house prices going up 20-30% in a year is clearly not sustainable, just like 2% interest rates clearly weren't sustainable. So my personal opinion, I'm definitely not a financial advisor. So just to clarify, anything I say is not financial advice. So please don't come after me if you do something that I say and it doesn't work out. But as far as residential market, I just see prices sort of stabilizing and going back to what we used to see in the marketplace, which historically New Zealand's 8% per annum increases compounding per annum. And I think we're going to see it sort of stabilize, stay potentially a little bit flat for a bit longer. Whether there's a little creep down or creep up on prices, we're yet to see. But I think we're just going to go back to that more slow and steady and controllable growth, not just in construction, but in a lot of other industries. So the second question I got asked is, how do you ensure people can't hear their neighbours next to them through the intertenancy wall? Great question. So what the intertenancy wall is, by the way, for those that don't know, if you buy a townhouse or an apartment, pretty much any firewall between you or your neighbour is what's called the intertenancy wall. And there's lots of different products you can use to essentially meet the fire ratings and the acoustic ratings. What we do at Williams Corporation, we use a product called Hebel. So in between each house, which is built independently, we put a panel of Hebel. And Hebel is an aerated concrete panel made in Australia, and it's reinforced with steel. And the benefits of that is it means that each house has its own timber framing. It's braced independently, and the actual frame in itself is not a firewall, so you can run your pipes, your wires, hang your pictures and TV up without any issues. And then in between those two units, you have a nice 50mm thick concrete aerated panel. And then it means you've got really proper separation between you and your neighbour. And also, as the panel goes up, you've also got a mineral firewall to join panels together and make sure there's not a break, either acoustically or fire. And a lot of the councils actually regulate us and make sure that when we finish construction, we actually do a test with a third party in our homes to make sure it meets the building code, if not exceeds it. And what they do is they come into the house and essentially they have to play a really loud speaker to a certain frequency and decibel. And they go into your neighbour's house with essentially a microphone and make sure that there's no audible transmission through the wall. And the last times we got tested about 20 to 25% above building code through that Hebel intertenancy wall system. Plus we put insulation and then jib on the timber framing. Third question, with increased interest rates, do you still think now is a good time to buy? I think interest rates are something that should not be looked at a snapshot moment. Are they higher now than where they were? Absolutely. But are they still lower than where they have been? Absolutely. I think people get very caught up in going, what are interest rates doing right now when I buy, or what are they forecast to do next year or the next 2 years? The average mortgage in New Zealand might be 15, 20, 25, 30 years. So I think it's a very sort of small-minded thing to just focus on what is interest rates doing right now. With interest rates rising though, and the market being softer, it can potentially make it a good time to buy. You're not competing with people that sort of in the hot market, you get what's called fear of missing out, where everyone's trying to rush in, they're sort of buying things quicker with doing less due diligence. And when the market has cooled, you do have more time to sort of think, get specialist advice and make sure the property is right for you. So I think in a rising interest rate environment, you do potentially have more time and more stock available to have sort of more time and just more options is what I'm trying to say. Sorry about butchering that before. The downside of that is obviously it is more expensive to service your mortgage when interest rates are higher. But then at the same time, it's all relative for everyone. For example, if you buy the average house in Christchurch, it is probably about half the average price of Auckland, which means that in Christchurch, if your interest rates have doubled, it is the same as what it would be in Auckland when interest rates were half. So I think affordability just really comes into the play when you're looking at property, especially in a higher interest rate market. But I wouldn't let higher interest rates turn me off buying a property. It would just make me a lot more selective about potentially what I was to buy. And I think really utilizing the ability to spend more time on your property journey versus having to sort of rush into it, which a lot of people do when the market's a bit hotter. Next question, how do Williams Corporation ensure they meet the build deadlines on projects? So that's a really good question. I think one, it is construction. There's a lot of moving parts, whether it be consenting as far as getting your building consent, your resource consent, and your permission to build your home, or whether it's the actual construction aspect as far as procuring the labour, procuring the materials, booking your council inspections, getting your sign-off and your subdivision done. There are a lot of moving parts, and there is always a lot of opportunity for things to slip or to go wrong, whether that be bad weather, whether it be sort of trying to find more resources. What we do is we do always do our best to deliver our homes on time, and we generally always do, is just be realistic. I think step one is be realistic with your customers. As far as when they sign up to purchase a house, we try sort of say, this is a complex process. However, we're trying to take a conservative approach to when your house will be finished off us. And then obviously internally, we try to do all we can to build homes quickly and efficiently and to a high standard, but also while communicating openly to the customer. And generally, you sort of meet in the middle where we might deliver it slightly sooner than expected to the customer, but maybe slightly slower than what we thought we would have delivered it internally. And then as far as the actual sort of inner workings of that, we make a big effort to use the same suppliers, the same contractors. We have in-house project managers that go to site every day. We have external quality inspectors that visit our sites at set milestones. So to make sure that we've got a Williams Corporation representative on our building site every day, essentially making sure that the people on site required to complete the job are, and to make sure that we're communicating to our suppliers and our contractors when they need to be finished by in order for the next person to come through. And it's just about having really open lines of communication with your contractors, with your suppliers, to make sure everyone's on the same page. And then one of the last questions, why should I invest in property over other big purchase items? I'd like to know a bit more background about this question, but I'll try and answer it the best I can. I suppose there's always a lot of options of where you spend your money. Like, why should I invest in property over other big purchase items? When you say invest in property, I presume you're talking as far as you want to invest money in an asset class to hopefully make you more money in the long term. Property in New Zealand has always been very, very well regarded at doing that. If you look at average house price growth in New Zealand from, say, 1990 till now, it's absolutely huge. Obviously, you've got other benefits with property. You can insure it. That means if someone burns it down, if something happens to it, you get reimbursed. Obviously, you can get a tenant, which pays you rent. And a really big thing about it is also leveraging, is you can go to the bank and say, I have $300,000 and I would like to buy this $1 million house. And the bank will loan you that balance money. But then when the property appreciates, if it does, you're essentially getting all the benefit of that appreciation, even though you only put in a portion of the equity to buy it. So I think leverage and insurance and just tangibility, like you can drive past your house, you can touch it. It's a very tangible asset, and it's also a commodity. People need roofs over their head. They need somewhere to live. It's very quantifiable. I suppose other big purchase items, whether that be the stock market, whether that be crypto, whether that be big bars of gold, it's just harder to quantify the necessity of them. And it's also harder to insure them and harder to leverage your money into them. So I've always said there's no right answer for what is a good investment and what isn't, so to speak. But property, as far as if you look at a track record of property, especially in New Zealand, it's always done extremely well. So I can't recommend things. I'm not a financial advisor, but I am definitely a big believer in property. Right, that is all of the 5 questions, everyone. So thank you very much for asking those. And if you've got future questions for future Q&A, which either Matthew or myself would do, we'd absolutely love to hear them. It's always great to jump on for 10 minutes and sort of give our 2 cents on a couple of topics. So yeah, thanks very much for attending, and we'll hopefully see you at the next one.